Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby.
Hello and welcome to Movies vs. Capitalism, an anti-capitalist movie podcast. I am Rivka Rivera.
And I am Frank Capello. Rivka, I am so excited that it is almost the holiday break. We're going to be taking a couple weeks off, so there won't be no episodes the next 2 weeks. And you know what? There's so few times of the year where it's just like, oh, I get a week where I don't have to do anything. I can't wait.
I'm panicking.
Panicking. Over what?
Well,
so Frank, you want to keep productive?
Yes, as you know, me being a Capricorn, I was about to say rising. It's not rising. I'm a Cancer rising and newly discovered Libra moon. So it's all clicking. But as a Capricorn, I am susceptible to, like, truly probably the most susceptible to some of the capitalist workaholism. So my mantras are like, you know, find the joy and pleasure in small things. And like, so yes, I do panic. And I'm excited, but I'm a little panicked because I feel the urge to like the things that my brain, the lists I've already filled with like productivity and how I'm going to just like clean the house. And I'm already like have like my tech. I'm going to clean out my tech. I'm going to clean out my house. There's no actual like I need to chill like you're saying.
Yeah.
So I am excited, but I'll be honest, I'm panicking. I'm working on it. I
could tell. You're putting in the time. You're putting in the work. If you need me to like call, even need me to be like your accountability buddy, I'd call you up once a day and just be like, "Hey, Riv, chill out. Just relax. Go take a nap."
You. Yeah, and you know, I probably will. I'm also good. I'm not. I don't want people to think I'm not good at chilling. You know me. I'm like I can chill.
You're about to say I could party. I could party. Well, we're going to keep this short today, but first we wanted to talk really briefly about the end of this past summer's week of labor actions in Hollywood in the entertainment industry. So after several weeks of voting on December 5th, SAG-AFTRA, the actors union, ratified its new contracts. The contract was approved with 78% of those voting in favor, although the turnout for the vote was only 38% of SAG-AFTRA's total membership. So very poor turnout. So really a very small margin of SAG members are the ones who actually ratified this contract. You know, we don't need to belabor it. We've talked about it on here. There were a lot of gains in terms of compensation, in terms of streaming residuals that hadn't existed previously. But the big concern that a lot of rank and file SAG members still had were the protections against artificial intelligence. Specifically, what the final deal ended up including was, yes, studios can use AI performers, but actors will have the opportunity to either consent or not consent for their likenesses to be used as AI performers or to create new synthetic performers, you know, that AI can create on its own. So the criticism from a lot of SAG members has been that, you know, this provision is not strong enough. It'll basically create a situation where every time a SAG member books a job, they're going to have to be asked, hey, do you consent to us having your likeness forever? And will it create scenarios where if they don't consent, then the producers can just say, okay, well, we'll find another actor. So that's sort of the big, still scary, looming thing. But it's officially done. Here we are.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about it? I know we've talked a little bit about it, but
for the record, yeah, I voted no. I don't know why I need that on the record. And it could have been, I don't know. I voted no, and I still was like, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is here other than like looking forward to a general strike. It's been such a big year. I guess my thoughts are an eventful year. I guess my thoughts are we really wanted, the vibe was like, let's just move into if we're leaving something in 2023, if we're leaving something, I wanted it to be AI, like, but it turns out no. And, you know, and that may have been unrealistic. Like, we're bringing it forward with us. It's a tool we're going to have to live with. It is a little scary. It is scary. But I got to think there's hope.
I hear you. And I do think that the widespread implementation of AI across pretty much every industry will accelerate and will catalyze a lot of labor action in the coming decades.
Agreed.
I hope. I mean, we have to hope and we have to work towards that scenario, because if we don't, then it's only going to become a scenario where, you know, just a few billionaires becoming trillionaires at the top who own all of the AI, who are just hoarding all of the wealth created by this technology that is replacing human jobs. And that's part of a much larger conversation about technology and labor and, you know, accelerationism. But it seems that's where we're headed, and I hope it ends up being a scenario where, yes, people wake up and there is a, like you're saying, a general strike, large collective action for people to reclaim their power in this new technological economy.
You know what? This is interesting, because thinking about, and maybe I'm just in a very reflective mood, and we'll get into that more in the episode today, but the role of imagination in societal change, in revolution, in all of it, and that's what we look at on this podcast. I'm thinking about, like, wow, you know, it does. I'm ready for the movies that show us, and maybe please let us know if there's good ones out there, but that aren't perpetuating like the fear-based, and not that it's not good to know, like, here's the dangers, here's the horrors of what could happen, but we don't have that. I want to strengthen that imagination of how robots can help us. Maybe there's some of that in the Matrix a little bit, potentially. I don't know. In the next two, maybe I'm just saying things. But do you know what I'm saying? Like, I want to see the utopia, because everyone spends so much time saying, like, well, that's not, but we don't see it. Actually, it is. Like, it's very clear the ways in which this technology could be extremely helpful and maybe actually relieve anyone of doing, like, manual labor that's not bringing them joy.
Yeah. That's the utopian ideal.
So I want to see more of those movies. Please let us know if you know of good ones that are, or bad ones, but just ones that are in that realm of, you know, looking at AI through that imaginative lens. I also just wanted, again, in this reflective moment, which I hope everyone gets to have some reflection, because I think that's one of the beautiful things about this time of year. I was really thinking a lot about our conversation with Brian on Zoolander. But truly, I think it got to what was so interesting. Our conversation got to the core of what I think you and I are both really moved by and interested in, and why we keep doing this podcast and having these conversations, is that criticism is not just an intellectual act, it's an emotional act, and it's an act of love. But it's so rarely viewed that way, particularly because capitalism is terrified of any critique, because that will open the hearts and minds and wake people up. There's, of course, well, I shouldn't say of course, I don't want to assume anyone's heard it, but there's a James Baldwin quote that I love from his essays, Notes of a Native Son. And he says, "I love America more than any other country in this world, and exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually." And I think, yeah, that's something I want to continue. It's a practice. Like, I think criticism, you have to practice it, because I think Brian had some good point. It can harden people. I think it can become a binary act if you're not practicing it as something that's expansive and nuanced and an act of love. I do think you can criticize,
sure,
not through that lens. I think you can criticize as a means of defense and close down and shutting down any other perspective. But then it's ultimately not really criticism, because criticism in itself, I think, is inherently looking at everything from every angle. Again, I just discovered that I'm a Libra moon. It makes a lot of sense.
All right, well, we must get into our conversation today about The Muppet Christmas Carol. But before we do, just want to let you all know that this podcast is produced by the two of us.
We perform all of the necessary labor to make this show happen.
And as we're trying to practice our anti-capitalist values, we will not be selling ads on this show. We rely completely on community support to keep the show going. So if you're able to support us, please consider subscribing to our Patreon.
For just $5 a month, you get access to our entire back catalog of premium episodes, and you'll be directly supporting this show. You can also leave us a one-time contribution in our tip jar, and you can find all of those links in the episode description in your podcast player or by going to mvcpod.com.
You can also help us out for free by leaving a rating and review for this show on your podcast player. It only takes a few seconds, and it is very helpful in boosting the algorithm and getting this show in front of more people, so we really appreciate it. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with our conversation about The Muppet Christmas Carol with Wren Mack.
Okay, well, we are joined again by one of our favorite guests, Wren Mack, they, them. Wren is a performer, a writer, a filmmaker, and teacher. They wrote and are currently performing in a sold-out run of their one-person immersive phone game called Nuance with Candle House Collective.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm excited to ask about this. Off the telephone wires, Wren most recently appeared in No Finer Way, an immersive production in a defunct train station in, am I saying this right, Bremerhaven? Bremerhaven, Germany.
Nailed it.
Ooh, that was good.
Thank you. Let's see, you gave me the phonetics for this. Das letzte Kleinod.
Das letzte Kleinod. Yeah.
Das letzte Kleinod. Yeah, I was giving it way too soft when I did it. Das letzte Kleinod.
Yes, with the gut.
They are also an award-winning indie film producer, were published by Routledge Press, served as the voice of the United States CISA security alerts, which we discussed in our Matrix episode. Go back and give that a listen. And performed in Bottom of the Ocean, a New York Times critic pick. They have taught at New York Film Academy, Trinity College, and workshops worldwide. They most recently served as a guest lecturer at Columbia University. Welcome back to the pod, Wren.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so stoked to be here.
Wren, it's so good to have you back. It's so good to see you. We've gotten rave reviews from our listeners that your episode that you did with us on The Matrix is a fan favorite. It's the people have spoken. It's one of the best MVC episodes of all time.
It's an honor. And, we had really good source material. Like, we could have mined The Matrix for another 3 hours. It's an incredible film.
Before we get into it, great source material today as well. But before we get into it, tell us a little bit about this one-person immersive phone game. I'm really curious about how this works and what it is.
Yes. So Candle House Collective is a theater company that primarily does theater, not always, but often via the phone. So in order to experience their shows, all you need is a telephone and some time. Sometimes you need privacy, sometimes you don't. But these are one-on-one experiences. Ooh. So there is a performer on the other end of the line. This is not something that's pre-recorded. And you have an experience. And so I'm involved with 2 projects with them right now. Nuance, which I wrote with contributions from Evan Nyden, who is the artistic director of Candle House. And I am a performer in Lenox Mutual, which is opening on January 5th of next year. And tickets are going on sale on Sunday, which we're very excited about. Nuance is essentially you receive an image that maybe you weren't supposed to see via text. And then a PR company calls you to follow up because their client accidentally sent it and they need to suss you out. And things get progressively more manic from there. I'm trying not to spoil it too much.
Oh, you did it? No, I'm so intrigued. When one buys a ticket, Wren, you said you call them up. So is there a limited amount of shows you do a day? Because I would imagine that's really a lot for you as a performer if you're doing one-on-one, non-pre-recorded.
Yes. The show is about a half hour, and I do between 2 and 4 a day. And audience members, participants, because you are a part of the show. It's not happening at you, and different things will happen depending on what you choose and do. It really is like a game. I've designed it like a game. So there's many different ways that the story can go, depending on what you do. But yeah, you pick the time and you submit your phone number as a part of your onboarding, and somebody calls you at the appointed time.
So
That's
cool.
so fucking cool. I love when I find out that theater storytelling has like broken a new format and found a new venue that like I never even considered. But then as soon, like the telephone, it's like, yeah, why the fuck can't plays just be on the telephone? And then as soon as I hear that, I'm like, why can't they be just on the telephone? That's awesome. I want to check this out. This sounds dope.
And this was part of our Giving Tuesday drive. So it was part of a larger thing. Several ensemble members wrote shows, and it's called Radio Arcade, all of them together. So all of them are based on old video games. So Nuance, I'll let you guess from the poster which one it's based on, but it is very fun. It can be nostalgic. I have gotten feedback like, oh God, and is this being recorded? So that gives you
Sure.
an idea.
Amazing. Well, we'll make sure to link to this in the show notes because this will be coming out next week. So, but you are here today to speak with us again about a film, and I'm very excited that you chose this film. We asked a few returning guests, if you're interested in doing a holiday movie with us, and if so, what would that be? So you chose the Muppet Christmas Carol, not a Muppet Christmas Carol, the definitive Muppet Christmas Carol, directed by Brian Henson, Jim Henson's son, written by Jerry Jewell, based on the novel A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, stars Michael Caine as Ebenezer Scrooge, Kermit the Frog as Bob Cratchit, Miss Piggy as Mrs. Cratchit, the Great Gonzo as Charles Dickens, Fozzie Bear as Fozziewig, and Rizzo the Rat as Rizzo the Rat. And those voice performances, along with a myriad of other characters in the film, are performed by Steve Whitmire, David Goles, Jerry Nelson, and Frank Oz. The budget was $12 million, only made $33 million worldwide. They were hoping for more, and we'll discuss a little bit of why it didn't make as much money as they thought. Although I'm assuming it's made a lot more now in the age of streaming licensing, because this is a lot of people's one of their favorite holiday classics. If you haven't seen this movie or haven't seen it in a while, it's the story of A Christmas Carol, which we all know. It's been done in many different ways. Ebenezer Scrooge. He's a miser, a moneylender. No one likes him. Very greedy. His dead business partner shows up one night and is like, "Hey, you're gonna basically go to hell unless you change your ways." So these three ghosts are gonna show up and show you your Christmases so that you just become a better person. He meets some ghosts. They go on journeys, and by the end, he comes out and he's like, "I got to give my employee Bob Cratchit a raise and just be a generally better person overall." So that's A Christmas Carol. I didn't want to go to the trouble of actually writing it down because I feel like everyone knows the story of A Christmas Carol.
It's one of the most adapted tales, and we'll get more into it. But before we do, some context for when The Christmas Carol came out. It was released on December 11th, 1992, so just had an anniversary a few days ago. And so we're in the year 1992. It's the final year of George H.W. Bush's presidency. In February of that year, a court in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, sentenced serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer to life in prison. In April, approximately 500,000 people marched on Washington, D.C. in support of abortion rights in advance of oral arguments in the case of Planned Parenthood versus Casey. In late April, in Simi Valley, California, a jury acquits 4 LAPD officers accused of excessive force in the videotaped beating of Rodney King, a black man causing the 1992 Los Angeles riots, which resulted in 53 deaths and $1 billion in damages. Wow. What a year. And there's more to come. In May, the 27th Amendment to the United States Constitution is enacted regarding congressional pay raises. This is the last amendment that has been added to the U.S. Constitution. In late May, Johnny Carson retires as the host of The Tonight Show, replaced by Jay Leno. In August, the Mall of America, constructed on 78 acres, opens in Bloomington, Minnesota. In November, Bill Clinton defeats incumbent George H.W. Bush in the presidential election. And on November 25th, Disney releases the animated film Aladdin, which goes on to be the highest grossing film of that year. That last one just placed me. I'm like, I know where I was.
Yeah, holy shit,
Wow.
1992. My God. And that was actually, that's the reason that Muppet Christmas Carol didn't do so well, because it was going up against Aladdin and Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
Oh,
those two
wow.
movies were just eating its lunch. So the Muppets stood no chance.
God bless. They're so gentle. They don't have any fight in them.
They don't.
They just want to throw some rubber chickens around,
So, Wren, the first thing we start with, we ask our guests, why did you choose this movie to talk about?
because it's perfect. It's, everyone has like their Christmas movie. This is mine. I have always loved A Christmas Carol, but I think that a lot of adaptations can take themselves a little too seriously sometimes. Like we must punish Scrooge and we must let everybody know that he's a bad, bad man. It's like, bro, if you can't see that somebody who's foreclosing on people at Christmas is bad, like we're not doing our jobs, So, it's silly, it's fun, it's light, but it also like grabs you, but it grabs your beating heart out of your chest and, makes you look at it. I love this film. I love puppetry. One of the things I am getting into in this last year is puppetry. And so the artistry
cool.
of especially the opening numbers of this film are just like, there's at least 20 puppeteers operating. It's absolutely incredible the way they did the Ghost of Christmas Past, which is a puppet. That is not a person. That is a puppet that they shot underwater and green screened in, like.
Oh, wow.
So
I was wondering
cool.
how they achieved that look. Yeah.
That floaty. Yeah. It's got the line, God save my little broken body, like, which I say daily, like, how can you not love it? It's, and it's got a lot of food mentions, and I love food. And I love descriptions of food.
One of my favorite things about the Muppet universe is that we get talking food all the time. It's one of their best running bits. I think like the first joke in this movie is a wagon of pumpkins being like, "Help, we're being stolen."
Yes. Oh my God. Which that's like one of my first bullet points on my notes over here. I was like, this is so important because this also is such an I'm not even sure if it's anti-capitalist inherently. It's just sort of like, hey, this sucks. Maybe not this. Like maybe there is an alternative. And that is, something that I think is at the heart of sometimes sort of saccharine sentiments of the season about like, goodwill towards men and all of that. Like, it's like, yeah, but what does that actually mean? How do we apply that? And I think there's like a very clear blueprint in Christmas Carol without there being any spirituality whatsoever. There's just freaky ghosts. That's another thing I freaking love about this. It's a ghost story. And Charles Dickens explicitly says it's a ghost story. Because Christmas is kind of haunted.
It's like the subtitle, I think, of the original book is like a ghost story for Christmas.
Yeah, one of the things I
dark.
read in prepping for this, and I didn't write it down, but I should have, so I can't remember exactly, but I know that Dickens was visiting the U.S. and was in a jail cell in Pennsylvania, and thinking about, wow, if you were here and actually your punishment is the ghosts coming and kind of going over, and that's where the genesis of this ghost idea came through. But I'm with you. I mean, I think just the basic, it's the most adapted story, right? It's just such an incredible ritual that happens. I love the time of year of holiday time. I love the new year and like the end of year and maybe it's the Capricorn in me. I love summarizing. I like getting down like what, I think I've shared this before. I keep a timeline of my life because I really like that orientation of just like what it means to look at past, present, and future. And this archetype is so incredible. Dickens wrote this story in 6 weeks, which is amazing. And it just kind of flung out of him and unbelievable. And it wasn't, he's already popular. Like he's already done Oliver Twist. He's already done these. Apparently like needed a hit. This is his I need a hit story. And a hit did he write?
I think he did okay. I think he did okay.
And it's just like, wow, what an amazing thing. Like, I'm sure there's obviously hints of other archetypal stories, but what it is to like write something it's just so crucial to the way we think of storytelling now, and to look, this concept of what it means to look back at your life and learn something. I will live my life in the past, present, and future. I love that sentiment. That's one of my favorite things about this tale.
Mine too. Yeah, the temporality of love. Like how love transforms you so that, like a lot of meditation teachers and such will talk about like, this oceanic feeling that you have when you are like, you feel connected to other people and to the universe. And one calls that love, but it also has to do with time. You feel like you're in the present, but you're also allowing the past to exist and the future to exist without assuming you know it. And the present too. Like it all keeps you curious. And that and that I think is like one of Scrooge's biggest shifts is he goes from being somebody who always has an answer for everything and always has a snappy comeback to somebody who is just utterly shaken by a little boy telling him it's Christmas Day. Like he's like just full of wonder again, you know, like, but that temporality like leads you to curiosity and more openness and possibility and therefore connecting with other people. Like it's just a gorgeous story. And it's a Christmas story with no Jesus in it. As a Jew, I love this because I go nuts for Christmas. Christmas is my favorite. It's such a great holiday. I'm just like not about the church. That's just not for me. But like, it's so nice to just be like, yeah, holly, red, green, love it.
Yeah, and this time of year, there's so much darkness in this story, which makes the warmth and the light and the glow inside so warm. I want to just riff off because I'm thinking about this now a little differently in terms of the spirituality of the story. And there's something I've just been thinking a lot this month about the power of witnessing, of bearing witness, what it means to bear witness as we look at what's happening in Gaza and Israel and for each other. And as things just seem to get worse and worse in many ways in the world, our role as witness bearers. And in some ways it's fascinating because Scrooge, this act is like the ghosts come and they're like, you're going to bear witness to your past, you're going to bear witness to your present, you're going to bear witness to your future. And that's Scrooge's role, because I'm sure there could have been another way to write the story where you go in, interact, but there's no real interacting. It's just stand back and allow the act of bearing witness to transform and change you.
And that brings me to The Love Is Gone. I mean, just that's my big moment of him bearing witness. Like, I think it's the first time in the sequences where he realizes, like, he stops trying to reach for people or call out someone's name. He just stands there weeping as his fiance leaves him. And it was, famously cut from the theatrical release because it was too sad, because he's just, as many people on the internet have stated, like Michael Caine, is as serious as a heart attack about this role. Like he really played it so straight. And
he's unbelievable in this movie.
Acting his face off.
Incredible. And what incredible scene partners he had, but some people can't do it with a Muppet. And he really just is so engaged with them at all moments, but he loses it. And he just starts accepting that he just has to watch and that there's nothing, that he can do to change what's happening there. But that's what I think galvanizes him to change things in the future, which is, you have to kind of have that helplessness. And Riff, I feel like this is what to your point about bearing witness right now, because we are essentially seeing it unfold on social media. We are watching these atrocities completely just unfold in real time in front of us. We are forced to act. We are forced to do more than just repost or raise awareness. Mm-hmm. We are forced to actually I have found myself actually not posting that much about it, and instead focusing my energy on, using 5 calls and contacting my representatives and, organizing. I just am not, I feel like I've hit my point with social media where I'm done sharing information on there.
Sure.
I just cannot handle only bearing witness.
Well, and that seems to be your point about the galvanizing. There's a point where it's not serving its role if it's not metabolized and pushed forward. And that is this tale.
Yeah, but that feeling of helplessness is necessary.
And that's why Dickens wrote this story. I mean, it was Rivka, as you're saying, you're right. He did need a hit. He had I forget the name of some serialized novel that was not performing well. He needed a hit, but also this is very much a part of Dickens's worldview. And just like a little bit, if you don't know that much about Charles Dickens, he was born to a middle-class family which got into financial difficulties when he was very young as a result of his father's spending habits. And in 1824, his father was committed to a debtor's prison. And then Charles Dickens, at age 12, was forced to pawn all of his books, leave school, and then go work at a shoeblacking factory. So this is a man who had firsthand experience with just the like oppressive and destructive nature of our economic system, and then was a child laborer. And then as he grows up and becomes, an acclaimed novelist, Oliver Twist is very much about, industrial London of that era and all the homeless illiterate children that he saw on a day-to-day basis running around the streets of London. And his societal critique is very much rooted in, we can and must be doing more for the people on the margins of our society. And so right around this time, he needs this hit. He's actually he's taking tours of prisons, like you're saying, Rivka, in the US and in the UK. He's very involved in the local reformist scenes. He's doing speeches and writing pamphlets about economic and educational reform. And then all of this stuff sort of coalesces around the same time where he's like, fuck, I need money. My wife just had her 5th kid. Fucking London is this shit cesspool because of the way that we've industrialized so fast and the way that capitalism has put all these pressures on our economic system. Okay, great. I'm going to write a story that tells people that being a rich asshole sucks, and I'm going to make it a Christmas story. That way everyone buys it. And that's how we got here, which I think it's amazing. It's an amazing synthesis of just all of the different factors of his life and the way that he was viewing society as this deeply unfair and unequal place. One thing I wanted to say about A Christmas Carol, the story, and this isn't an original thought, but I just want to bring it back to the anti-capitalist framing and just address that Dickens literally was living and existing at the same time as Karl Marx, but his read and what's portrayed in this story is not so much of a societal critique as it is just a individual critique, a bourgeois critique of, he's not actually challenging the system of capitalism. He's just saying, well, what if the people with all the money were just a little bit nicer? So it falls a little flat from being a full-blown systemic critique. So I just wanted to lay that out before we moved away from Dickens too much.
Yeah.
But you know what?
Thank
this
you
movie
so much.
doesn't move. As you're saying that, I was thinking about how pretty awesome it is that this movie doesn't remove the politics. I mean, it's hard to remove obviously some of the core politics of A Christmas Carol, although I'm sure there have been adaptations that have tried. But this really has certain lines from the very top that are from Rizzo the rat saying, he's with all the food at the top and he's eating some of the apples and he says, I'm creating scarcity. It drives the prices up. It's up in there from the top. This is 92, so it kind of also brings it in this present tense way to make it very of the time and make it very clear that this is not that A Christmas Carol is happening today and it is an eternal story. So I think kudos to this film for doing that. And I think let's jump into some of the nitty-gritty politics of the Christmas Carol film.
I mean, yeah, I think there's so much that is really verbatim, from the Charles Dickens book version. But there's also lovely little, they go further in in the past when they're in the schoolhouse, Sam the Eagle is work hard, lad, and one day your life will be as solid as this very building. And then a shelf collapses.
Brilliant.
And it's a shelf that is staggering under the weight of a bunch of geniuses like Aristotle and Shakespeare. And then it's, Gonzo and Rizzo on the end. And they're crushed by all of these busts of Western civilization.
Which they gave Muppet faces to, which I really appreciated.
Yes.
Fully constructed busts with Muppet faces.
They didn't have to go this hard.
But so hard.
But the Muppets have this history of doing this. One of the first, I'm recalling this correctly. A Muppet scholar will correct me, but one of the first appearances of the Muppets on television was the Business sketch. Are we familiar with this?
Sounding familiar.
I don't know that one off the top of my head, no.
little creatures going business, 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 and like, you know, and starting to say things like stocks rising, you know, there's, you know, they're too little, just saying like word salad of like business speech. And then, you know, another Muppet comes in and goes, love, like, and it's all very like rhythmic. It's like Menomina a little bit. It's like the ancestor of Menomina.
Got it.
And, you know, and then the eventually like the love brotherhood Muppets take over and they get together and they're like, yeah, this is great. And then they get into, they're like, oh, you know, like we should share resources. But if we sold the extra ones at a profit, and then they turn into business by the end. Like Jim Henson has been down since the beginning, and he just puts it in phrasing that we don't see it immediately, you know, or we don't, you know, we're like, oh, this is for kids. But he's an educator. He's an educator.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a reason that the Muppet Show was like as hugely successful and popular as it was, because it was like very well written, sharp comedy and music and performance. It was just like an incredible variety show. I've seen enough of the original Muppet Show, but I think like people of our generation don't realize that, yeah, like in the mid 70s, like the Muppet Show was like a prime time hit. Like people, like adults were tuning in to watch the Muppet Show.
Cher was on it. Like everyone was on it. Like every single person was on it. It was for grown-ups too, for sure.
It's interesting you brought up the scene with the teacher. That was a crucial scene for me as well. I was just thinking about Christmas Carol and Scrooge's journey in a different way on this rewatch. And I was thinking about the role of trauma and abuse under capitalism. And just, I was like, oh, we're seeing in the past the origin story of sort of this evil capitalist archetype. And there were, you know, if I was going to critique a little, and I haven't read A Christmas Carol, I will say, so I don't know if there's more of this in there, but I wanted more of like, to know a little more of like Scrooge's context and material context. Where were his parents? Why weren't they there? What was it like larger external system that was causing that? But I did think it was interesting in his journey. It was important that was like, we were seeing that like this was taught to him, even if well-meaning. It was passed down that he's like, business is the American way. And then he goes, oh, I mean the British way, because it's not an American story. That it's important that in that scene, you know, if we're getting anything, that it's like, this is what was, there was someone who before this wasn't inherently this system, which I think can be tricky because sometimes with a Scrooge story, you can lean into this inherent evil idea that he was maybe just born a grumpy, angry man. And so this is really important that we see the ways in which Scrooge was formed and shaped by the system of capitalism and by these exploitative systems. And then, like you were saying, that scene between him and, what is her name, the woman that he proposes to? Belle, of course.
It's Belle.
Well, and also, by the way, young Scrooge could get it. Young Scrooge.
Such a snack. Oh my God.
Such a snack. Oh my God. The cheekbones and how he looks like Michael Caine. Like, you're just like, excuse me. I'm like tucking my hair behind my ear.
Honestly, like kind of poor casting, because as soon as I saw young adult Scrooge, I was like, this guy isn't turning into an asshole. He's getting so much ass in 19th century London. His life is great.
Yeah, but that was so good.
That's the problem. He had everything.
He had everything. Well, and also what I saw there, because I was like, what's going on here, right? Like, it was, what was so heartbreaking in that moment was to see how he just really bought into this idea that, which he wasn't wrong in some way. I understand that anxiety of like, I can't have a family and a house with you. The material conditions are that like we're gonna starve. And his anxiety was actually very real there. And I was like, oh, I'm having a moment of empathy with my dear Scrooge here. He wasn't wrong. It's heartbreaking to see. And I don't know, there's something there that I want to, and like if I was to do my own adaptation, something to expand on here, you know?
So to answer your question from earlier, he was placed in the boarding school by an unloving father. So we are set up with daddy issues from the beginning. So you can understand how somebody preparing to start a family might go, I don't want to be like that. You know, you're so afraid of fatherhood that you just avoid the subject altogether. You know,
Totally.
that you sort of disassociate into work, you know.
Yes.
And which seems very much like what he does. Like, you know, he's at Fezziwig's party and he can't chill out, and Fezziwig's like, just enjoy. And like, and I completely identify with that feeling. It's a horrible thing to identify with, but I identify with that feeling of just like, I can't, no kisses right now. I have to do work, you know, like
Get that eggnog out of here.
work. I have to pay rent. I am a serious person. I have recently, like during this holiday season, had to like meditate before outings, before like fun social outings, because my brain is not able to determine like, is this a fun social outing or am I doing work right now? You know, and I have to like sit down and literally tell myself to chill out and enjoy life. Like I have, Scrooge is such a cautionary tale. It is not like a, hey, look at this bad guy and look at these bad capitalists. It is, this is what we are all capable of becoming because of this system.
Yes.
You know, like, this is not like he is an unusually evil person. He is not presented as, you know, preternaturally evil in any way.
Yes. And this was the scene I really saw it. This was, because I think there are some parts where it can lean into the other one. And this was the scene that I was like,
Yeah.
oh. And then appropriately, Michael Caine, as you mentioned, breaks down in like unbelievable tears.
Sobbing.
His emotional life is just extraordinary. I do have to say, I don't know, Frank or Wren, have you read Michael Caine's pretty well known in the acting circles film book about acting on camera?
Yes.
No.
Well, there is a moment
I
that
sure have. And watch the videos on YouTube. I'm obsessed.
they're extraordinary. I'm obsessed. It's a brilliant book, but there is, if you recall, Wren, there is a moment where he talks about, if you're on set and you can't cry, like, it's not a big deal. Just ask for a little menthol. You tear right up. So, like, I'm not doubting
Wow.
but I loved, there are certain moments where I'm like, he's getting it, you know, he's teary-eyed, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I just had this vision of Michael Caine on the set of, like, with the Muppets, like, hit me with menthol.
Just like soaking the Muppets' heads in menthol so it wafts upwards. Yeah, like completely. No, but he's for sure sobbing in those scenes, as am I.
He carries the emotional weight of this entire movie. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, a little
Yes.
tiny Muppet frog, Tiny Tim, you know, coughing with a crutch. Like, even though that's a Muppet, that will get me.
Oh, really? Because I had some
Yes.
critiques of I think it was Robin the Frog. I had some critiques of Robin the Frog's performance.
Robin the Frog.
Wow. Okay.
Not my favorite
Ooh.
Tiny Tim of all the Tiny Tims, but we'll circle back.
But I just to say that, like, Kane's commitment to this performance is really the beating heart of this adaptation. His commitment to not only playing Scrooge, and I gotta say, I feel like this is one of the best Scrooges I've seen, in that it's not a broad, like, I'm just mean because I'm greedy. I felt a real resentment and a real simmering anger underneath his Scrooge performance. And then conversely, anytime he is affected by what the Muppets are doing, he is feeling such pure emotion. Like, the moment of him watching the Cratchits sing their little love song and he's starting to tear up, I started to tear up watching Michael Caine watch the Muppets. Like, that's how good he was
Menthol
in
or
this
no
run.
menthol?
Menthol or no menthol?
Absolutely. I mean, but he does, you know, that is, I think, part of the magic of the Muppets, is that they do put humans next to them. The puppets are characters that are on the same level as humans and interacting with humans. And like, one of the first things you learn when you start with puppets is that they have to breathe. If
Oh,
they
wow.
don't breathe just a little bit, you don't buy it as something that has, you know, sentience. And when you have humans next to the Muppets, it does a bit of the breathing with them and for them. Like, it's almost sleight of hand. And so the more someone is like breathing, which, I mean, Michael Caine is like in touch with his core, in touch with his voice, like the breath is moving through him. It really lends more life to the puppets. And so, like, when we don't see Michael Caine crying, because the cut happens, basically, you know, she walks away, and in the cut version, she walks away, and then we cut to Gonzo and Rizzo crying. it really sells the crying more when Michael Caine is crying near them. Like it does. It just does.
Yeah, he says in a GQ interview about this movie, they ask him something like, "Where do you look?" And he's like, "I look him right in the eyes." I thought that was so charming.
Yes,
Right
yes,
in the
you
eyes.
do.
I was like, which eye though? If you've read the acting book, you know.
Yeah. Which eyebrow? The one closest.
Always
to
the
camera.
one closest to
Always.
camera.
Always.
Okay.
I mean, so he carried this, but I also got to say, Miles Goodman, his score with those French horns just get me going. And Paul Williams' songs, like I just have to give a shout out to the music. Like they did not have to, jam an entire French horn down our throat, like reach through the screen and just like jam the whole thing in there. But they did. And I'm grateful. I'm like, thank you the whole time. It's like, it's so beautiful and so moving and like really just lifts these moments of tenderness that Michael Caine plays so well.
The music is so fun. The songs are so catchy. Kermit the Frog and Robin the Frog's little a cappella version
Best song.
As soon as they were singing that, I was like, I love these two. I love Tiny Tim so much. It was a reminder to me of how susceptible I am to the power of a cappella music. It just was a complete flashback to high school. It's like anytime people are singing with no instruments, I am on board.
Yeah.
And shout out to actors who like allowing actors to sing imperfectly. I loved it. Like they're not perfect singers, any of them, but it made it so human and so joy-filled, and it wasn't like this. Now I think when you see musical numbers, this score would be so done, like so.
It would,
and it was so
polished.
Just like, yes, it was so unpolished and just singing from the heart, which I loved. Well, now I feel bad that I said I didn't love Robin the Frog as Tiny Tim, but it's my truth.
Nah, let's go in on him because he is the heartstring puller.
And to clarify, I don't mean the puppeteers. Like, I actually really appreciate, I think there was this meta thing happening where they made a choice, which I loved. Especially Kermit the Frog. I think they made a choice that these Muppets were bad actors because it's the Muppets in The Christmas Carol. I won't go in so much on Robin the Frog as Tiny Tim. I just thought there could have been a little bit more, like, what was the line? Like a little bit more broken body, like a little bit more. Give me.
You really wanted the sense that this Muppet was on the verge of death, is what you wanted.
Yes. He gave me like a cough. You know what I'm saying? But let's go. Yeah. But I think it was intentional, and that was part of the humor. It had to be intentional with Kermit. This made me laugh so hard. The scene at the Christmas table when they realize that Tiny Tim has passed and Kermit has come back and is like talking to his family and says, I'm not going to do a good Kermit the Frog, but you can imagine like, it's all right, children. Life is made up of meetings and partings. That is the way it is. I am sure we will never forget. Then there's like a beat, and he says, Tiny Tim? Why did he put a question mark? And I paused and I go, now this is smart. They made a choice that Kermit is a terrible actor. What else is that? He beat and he goes, Tiny Tim? I was like, did you forget your son's name?
I think it's his voice trying to crack. I think it's like he's like starting to cry. Oh my God.
I said, this is so good. This needs to be discussed.
Well, I also wonder if it was a choice, and maybe we're all just reading into this too much, but maybe it was also a choice because that is a line from the original story. And it almost is a reading that sounds like he's reading from a children's book, or he's reading, aloud. And there are a couple moments like that throughout the film where there are certain things that they say that are sent up in such a way that it's like, this is part of, this is something that's from, like that whole, Miss Piggy going through the founder of the feast indeed, like all of that. That was a terrible Miss Piggy. But, the founder of the feast indeed is that whole exchange is from the book. And there's a little bit of a measured pacing to it.
That could be it. But it's just with a Kermit, when you can't blink. You got to give a little. I'm gonna go with that. It was the meta choice that they're like Kermit can't act. Kermit can't get this scene. He walks in and he's like, I'm like, your son just died. Your son just died, Kermit. Do a little moment before work.
It's possible. Kermit was a famously bad producer of the Muppet Show. Every week he was just like, I gotta get these Muppets to do this show, and every week they're like, fuck you, Kermit, we're gonna make your job as hard as possible. So it's possible that he's not talented in any way.
He walked so that Liz Lemon could run.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
We didn't touch on I know it's going back to the beginning, the setup, but where we set up Scrooge and how awful it's like a classic scene, but there's all the little mice who work for Scrooge, and then Kermit is Bob, and it's like that's one of my favorite. And also Michael Caine talks about in that GQ interview how it was such a hilarious and hard scene to film because it would just be he's turning around and then you would turn back and all these little mice who'd be like doing some, dancing or something, and then would go back to like writing and you'd see their quills. Like I can't imagine being on that set. He said it was the most joyful thing ever.
He also had to, in like the scene, any scene where the Muppets are like directly next to Michael Caine, he had to act on a narrow plank of wood so the puppeteers could be below him. So he's doing all of this on camera work while trying not to fall into a hole.
While trying not to fall into a hole or step on his scene partner who is doing the language. So like if you've ever seen like a puppetry setup, I had the honor of working with some folks who've worked on Sesame Street when I was up at the O'Neill last year. And there are just like a lot of pillows on the floor. There's like a special kind of like round chair that has no legs that's like squashy. And like they're just in these insane, and like we just have like a ton of duvetine to like hide body parts and but like they're just contorted into these crazy positions, and then they're mic'd up and they're like doing the voice and
it's
like
amazing.
and then if you're doing it with a human, it is a scene partner that is like is not making eye contact with you, and they have a monitor so that they can see that they're on the correct lines. I'm not sure in 1992 what they had. Now it's much easier to have a digital monitor, just like pop that under the table and you're good to go. But it is truly fascinating to see it work and to try to interact with it as a human.
Yeah, it is puppeteering is, from the little I know about it, is a technically very intense process. And it's like when you watch stuff like this and it just like looks like, oh yeah, look those little Muppets running around, you forget how much very intense like technical labor went into making that look as effortless as it did.
Absolutely. I mean, we haven't even talked about Jacob Marley yet, which I think is a very interesting thing to address. He says mankind was my business, not as in I decided to take care of mankind, as in I leached off of mankind. One of my favorite retellings of A Christmas Carol is Tom Mula's Jacob Marley's Christmas Carol. It's a four-hander, and basically it starts with Jacob Marley's death, and he is told that if he doesn't get Scrooge to change his ways post-mortem, so he's a ghost, if he doesn't get him to change his ways post-mortem, he will be doomed to ostensibly hell. He'll be wrapped up in those chains for life. So Jacob Marley actually is the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future, just trying to scare the shit out of his old coworker.
Wow.
So that he doesn't go to hell. It's a fabulous show, but I really love that reading on it, that like it's a like you thought it was about Scrooge, but it's actually a redemption story for Jacob Marley. But I mean, Marley is like held up as like somebody who's even more evil, who can't be redeemed. He's past redemption at this point, at least in the version that we're talking about right now. And, I think redemption is a really interesting thing to think about in our current culture, that there is a way for people to change their ways. Because yes, of course, like, Charles Dickens didn't go hard on the capitalists, like there was not a manifesto anywhere in Christmas Carol. But, I think there is also value in somebody being able to say, oh, I did wrong and now I'm going to do better, rather than our current culture, which is very much like, you did something wrong. We're going to call you out on Twitter, X. Sorry, I didn't mean to dead name Twitter. I'm going to call you out on X. And everyone is going to go after you. And there is no path for you to learn how to do better. And in fact, it will drive you. The only people who are going to be willing to talk to you are people who are extreme and will probably radicalize you further towards your position and make you double down. And there's no space for someone to actually get to change and improve, and therefore improve the world, which is like the goal, right? Like that's the whole point of calling someone out, is accountability, you know? And so there's sort of this lovely, like, Marley's coming through, like, yo, you're about to get canceled, my guy.
Yeah.
Like you've got one night and some freaky ghosts to do it in. And that's it.
I love that. I love thinking about, I love adaptations. I love when a story has that power to be retold, but I also love taking something and working on it more, you know, and that's sort of the place that I would love to see explored even further. Thinking about A Christmas Carol as a story of like a call-in culture narrative and how you can talk more about that. That's really interesting, Wren. Maybe we'll explore it.
That's funny. Actually, the thought that I had on this watch, especially in Christmas Present and Christmas Future, this is really just a guy watching people shit talk him, and the power of like hearing people talk behind your back,
which we now have. We have that technology,
which is valuable. We have that technology, but like the redemption aspect is what we are missing in today's culture. Like you could get all the shit talk, but you don't get the chance for redemption.
Yeah, you just get an inundation of information. And, you know, we have this idea that, like, the information is enough, you know, like raising awareness. Like we were saying earlier, if I post about Palestinian children dying, that is enough. I've spread information. And, like, it's not. You have to actually change. You have to change how you live.
Well, and that's also why I think the role of the ghosts here, who are so important, who are also amazing Muppets, and we talked a little bit about them, but just... there's a reason they're ghosts. There's a reason they're spirits. You can't bear witness without also having a spiritual connection, a guide to help you metabolize and move through that. That there's a difference between looking at something outside in isolation, not in community, and looking at something with a guide. And the role of guides, the role of spiritual ancestors, but also the role of community as guide through this kind of process. And that's really interesting too, as we talk about this, where I think there is a really important part of looking at what's happening right now, not turning away, especially when there's only, you know, when this is the only way to get on the ground news and the reality of the genocide and the atrocities. And yet social media alone is a tool. It's like, how do you use it? How do you access it? And do you have the community and the people to talk to be mutual guides through it, to bear witness, to unpack, to metabolize the grief groups, like whatever we need to create as we look at our present, the ghosts of our present and the ghosts of our past. You know, there's so much conversation about context now. And in a lot of ways, context has become this dirty word, but like that is what the desire is. I think there is a real Christmas Carol element of we have to look at our past to understand our present, to be wary of our future. And yeah, so maybe this narrative in some ways is really, really crucial.
And there's also no judgment from the spirits. None of the spirits ever say to Scrooge,
yes,
look how much of an asshole you're being right here, my dude. They're just saying, they're just saying, just look, just go look. It's right there. I'm just showing you. We're being objective here.
Yeah.
We're just letting the actions and the words speak for themselves. I also think the degeneration of language with the ghosts is very interesting. The ghost of Christmas past speaks the most. The ghost of Christmas present can't remember things and is like, did I just say that? Like several times, right? And then the ghost of Christmas future doesn't speak at all. Just gestures. It's, you know, like, and even in that there is a feeling of support, because it gives Scrooge room to feel things that maybe he's not able to articulate yet and act on them.
Deep film.
And going back to, you know, the going back to Palestine, you know, I think especially, for myself as an American Jew right now, there's, as you said, Riv, there's a lot of internal looking. There's a lot of looking back at like, oh, this is information I was fed and I didn't question. And I pride myself on like examining most things, and there were things in the back of my mind. I had thoughts about like, oh, this seems kind of weird. But, it occurred to me recently that our culture was so traumatized by what happened during World War II. And what does an abuser do? An abuser is never somebody who's just evil. An abuser is somebody who was abused. And if they don't face it, they continue to enact the harm that they experienced.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you are absolutely right. Like, this is a perfect time to examine the past, and examine the stories we tell ourselves that make up our identity, right? I'm not saying they're lies. I'm saying our identity, no matter what it is, my idea of myself as Wren Mack is a series of stories I've told myself. And at any time, I can decide to articulate that story differently or re-examine a different facet of it.
Through that non-judgmental lens of those
curiosity.
Entities. Yeah, of curiosity.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure this
wonder.
adaptation, because it's the Muppets, because it's the Hensons, because it's for children, probably is in some ways so much closer to the, like, that can reach those levels of truth in this story. Because it'll be interesting now to watch other adaptations. That's probably one of the hardest things to do, is to maintain that lack of judgment in the ghosts, right? Like, I feel like I remember what's the Diva Christmas Carol, and that's one of my faves. Maybe we'll do that another. But like, that's probably, I would imagine, one of the hardest things to maintain that truth of, because it's hard to write a character that doesn't have judgment. And
Sure.
it's beautiful. It's a beautiful challenge, and it works so. But like, it is, as we're discussing this and unpacking it, so crucial to the truth of this story. If they had judgment, it would ruin it.
Can they have judgment, these creatures? Because they exist. They already know what's going to happen. They already know. Because they're like, okay, I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to show you this. None of this is a surprise to any of these ghosts. In every single version of Christmas Carol, there's no like, oh, wow, I wasn't, damn, dude, you really fumbled the bag with Belle there. Like, Jesus, like. I
mean, yeah, I'm sure someone could write a bad version of it.
Absolutely. But like, they don't know. They know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So how can you judge? It's like being a teacher in some ways. Like, as a teacher, I will often know the lesson I would like to impart to a student. I don't know how they're going to get there. They might surprise me in how they get there, and they might find something that I never even saw. But my job is to sit back without judgment. And it's easier for me to do because I have an idea of where we're headed. And there is something about the temporality. Again, like going back to this, the temporality of love, or the freedom of, that love is free of time, in a way, true love can be free of time in a way that allows us to step back and say, oh, I know what's going to happen here. And just say, I know where we're headed, but I'm at peace with seeing how it unfolds, and I'm curious about it, even though I maybe know where the destination is. I'm not articulating this very well. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, that's beautiful.
I know exactly what you're saying. You're talking about one of my other favorite films, Interstellar, which
yes,
expands upon this exact concept.
Yes, I should have just said Interstellar and stopped talking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Muppets Interstellar is next.
There is a Muppets in Space movie. So the Muppets did, in fact, venture into the unknown.
They did. They did.
Last few things I want to hit just on the Muppet front, just because I fucking love the Muppets so much. One of the first lines is from a couple of rich bourgeois pigs talking about how many meals they're eating. Great. Wonderful. Gonzo and Rizzo the Rat, a national treasure. Statler and Waldorf as Marley and Marley. You couldn't use any of these Muppets in a better way. My one critique, though, is anytime they do Muppet feet stuff, I'm not into it. I don't like seeing unless it is a fully dressed Muppet like Sweetums, that is like a full tactile costume head to toe. If we're doing CGI Muppet feet, I am out. You've lost me. I don't want to see the rat's feet. That's my only like major critique of this film.
I didn't like seeing the animals eat animal. Like that weird, like the whole Miss Piggy making goose. Like they were very obsessed with eating a lot of birds, and I just found myself generally creeped out by it.
The goose was the same size as Rizzo when he lands on it. It's not okay.
Yeah.
It's not okay. I had a moment with that. But wait, Frank, I love what you said about the pig, the capitalist pigs, because they're talking about like, it's like, oh, like we're going to have breakfast and then like, what should we do? We'll have lunch, But like later, Rizzo does the same thing. Like he's like, what time is it? Like, is it supper time? And Gonzo says something like, no, it's time for, it's morning. And it's like, great, breakfast, like it's sort of this lovely, like, yeah, like we all want to eat. Like we all want to eat. The pigs aren't bad for wanting to eat. They're just taking from others, right? But we don't see that in that particular, right? But like the goal is that everybody eats. And I think that's sort of a wonderful, maybe it's not the most, radical leftist position, but like until everybody has enough to eat in this world, it is a thing we have to keep saying, that it is okay for everybody to want somebody. I can't remember if it was Riff or Frank that was saying this earlier. A big question that I have in this film is like, what is enough? What is, when will Scrooge be ready to marry? When will there be enough money? What is enough in the context of like the miserly life that he leads? He's gathering all of this money, but he's not using any of it. What is enough for a family that is, barely making ends meet? And how is enough enriched or impoverished by, I'm going to sound like a broken record, love?
Totally. And Scrooge's point of view is very much, he says, when asked to donate to the children's homeless, they don't call it this, but like homeless center, to the needy and those who, and it's like very meager. And his point of view is essentially, well, people should stop having other people. Like we need population control. He doesn't say it quite like that.
Are there no workhouses? Are there no prisons?
Right. Yes. And this is this sort of like population theory, Malthusian population theory that was really big in the Victorian era, but essentially that like population's increasing and there won't be enough for anyone. And so the issue is like how many people they are. The issue isn't that, a single fucking asshole like Scrooge is taking all of the stuff. That under these systems, we're meant to think that like this is how it is and it's set, and not that like, and also that like our produce and our capacity to create somehow would not be, it just wouldn't be possible to meet our population. It's so uncreative, and it's so, I think the idea that like to riff off what you're saying about love, that love is also like exponentially creative. So not that it's just like love for love's sake, but that love there's like you can start thinking about communal problem solving, and there's always enough when there's communal problem solving.
There's divergent thought rather than, what Scrooge has at the beginning, which is very convergent thought. There's only one answer to everything, and it's usually no. And it did just occur to me that, all of his employees are vermin. Like, that's how he sees them, potentially.
Yeah.
I might be reading into this, but like that, like that there is this idea that like, because whenever people talk about, this Malthusian concept of like overpopulation, well, we're not talking about our people. We're talking about the poor. They breed like rats.
Right. Totally.
There's sort of this like idea that there should be enough for me and my people, but other people should do population control. But yes, I think that you're right, that creativity, there's so much creativity in love and in curiosity that there really isn't in a world in which we say there isn't enough, which all roads lead back to Palestine right now. Maybe I'm a little bit of a Pollyanna here, but I have to believe that there is enough for everybody, that there is enough space, enough time, enough resources, enough state support, enough money, enough freedom. I have to believe that. I don't know what we're doing if a peace process doesn't involve a belief that there is enough.
Yes.
It also requires such imagination. It's kind of accurate, but kind of not, because it shouldn't be that hard to imagine this world that we're talking about, but it is for some people. But
clearly we've been struggling for several decades. So it is difficult. It is when this is all we've experienced, and this is now in our living memory, all of us on this call right now, it is impossible to imagine it was ever any other way. Right. Yeah. But we have to. And imagine something that hasn't existed yet.
That is so beautiful. If there isn't anything else, I think we should move to our awards. Oh, wait, I want to just give a quick shout out to Scrooge's hat. I want one of those hats.
Scrooge's hat.
One of those little nightcaps?
How could someone be so grumpy when they have such a cute little hat?
He looks so impossibly cozy. Just the sleepiest little guy. He's like it's like Sleepy Time Bear cosplay, honestly. Like, it's really great. Like, he just looks impossibly cozy.
It's probably like number one in the all-time list of like characters in pajamas. I can't think of another one which is like it's just like a famous literary character who is just like, that person is in their pajamas. Probably which also led to him being so vulnerable as these ghosts were taking him around. He's like, I'm out here in my dressing gown. Like, I'm feeling open. I'm feeling vulnerable.
He flies over London. Like, all of London is getting an upskirt from Scrooge. That's the way this journey begins. There's just like nards to the world. Like, way to just like break someone, real quick. I don't know if that's against the Geneva Conventions. We'll look it up.
Okay, so that brings us to our awards. As you know, we like to hand out awards for each movie, and our first one is Best Politics, which will go to the character with the best politics in this movie. It's got to be Miss Piggy as Mrs. Cratchit for me. I felt like she got it. She got it. And whatever, she got it. Even they're at the dinner table scene. I don't know, maybe. And also, again, we're in the meta world of Miss Piggy and Kermit are acting in these roles as each other's partner. It's like they're acting with their partner. So there's a lot going on there, which I picked up on. I think his bad acting really annoyed her. and she was like, when he's like, we should be like still very grateful for Scrooge, and say, like, he wanted to say nice things, and she's like, no. Yeah. And I appreciated that because they
had the feast indeed.
Yeah, they have their kids at the table, and she's like, I'm not going to model this, like, because that's also very problematic to model, like, we'll be grateful no matter what. We've seen where that leads and how that goes, and how that kind of idea thinking leads to voting and blah, 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 they'll see the light one day, and and she said no. So for me, that was it. I said, I like this woman. I like this Piggy. I like her politics.
Bob Cratchit, kind of a bootlicker, I'm realizing after this watch.
especially with Kermit's performance.
Especially Kermit's performance. Just like, we must be thankful to Mr. Scrooge. Yeah, and she's the one that's like, get that man's name out of your mouth. We're not thanking that asshole tonight.
This guy is letting our child die, like, and you're doing nothing to stop him. Like, what is wrong with you?
Barely gave you today off. Fucking thank this asshole.
Oh my God. We're canceling Kermit. Everyone, we're canceling Kermit. I'm ready for the emails to come in. I don't even have to field them. I'm so sorry.
We'll forward them to you, Wren.
Thank you. I will navigate it. I honestly pull for Belle. I pull for Belle. Belle is like, look, if you can't give me what I need, I'm outie. Like, I am not going to stay here and like have this, like, you probably would give me a comfortable life, but like, it's time for me to go. And Meredith Braun in an interview said, like, I believe she goes on to be a suffragette. So in the fan fiction universe, like, she's like, but true. I mean, like, she's like, I don't know how great her politics actually are in the canon, but I don't know. Rizzo the Rat, I feel like he's very like You know, he's like, I'm just going to do what's right for me. And like, he's used to a collectivist culture because he, as he mentioned, he has like thousands of brothers and sisters. He's like, I don't know what it's like to be alone. He is good at finding snacks.
It's good.
Yeah.
Very
But
resourceful.
Miss Piggy definitely, I think, is the winner here.
But Belle, I didn't think about that. That's so true. And also, again, thinking in the context that this is being shown to all of these children, it's very different than so many stories in which you see the woman just like choose the bad guy, you know, just make terrible choices for the sake of marriage.
That's gender. You know who actually has the best politics? Fezziwig. Fezziwig has a highly successful business and gives a ton away all the time anyway. Like, he has found a way to, as much as he can, live ethically under capitalism. I would argue he's like living the most ethically under capitalism. The ethical capitalist. Also, a moment for all the rubber chickens hanging in the Fezziwig rubber chicken factory. Like, they're so macabre and so cute at the same time. But like, no, I mean, like, that is one of the scenes of most plenty and joy in the film. And Scrooge keeps coming after him for like, you can't keep, you know, these expenditures are crazy. And Fezziwig's like, this is what it's about. This is why we worked this hard. It's for this.
Amazing turn of events that Ebenezer Scrooge got. His first gig was working for the benevolent capitalist Fezziwig.
I know.
Even a more harsh direction, if not.
But it's kind of amazing because it shows you the power of the system, right? Like, even just one good guy, it's not about that. It's like the system is big enough that that he's like, I don't care, Fezziwig. All right, our next award is worst politics. Goes to the character with the worst politics in the movie.
I mean, I guess like pre-revelation Scrooge.
Yeah, and I don't know if this revelation takes care of the politics quite yet. We'll see. Jury's out.
Oh, you don't think this was a life-changing event? You think on December 26th,
in my most
he's like, get back to work, everybody.
In my most optimistic, I hope, but I also feel like, you know, I do think if I'm like in my political self, I'm like, I think there's like it takes practice. I think it's like,
and you suck at it at first.
Yeah, and I've seen people enjoy, like, there's something to me, now that I'm getting cynical and a little suspicious, like, I find like, I've had a moment, and, like, I'm going, I'm so excited for Christmas, like, there's still something slightly narcissistic about his revelation. He's like, I'm gonna be a good man, and, like, I'm gonna give you know, he just saw people didn't like him. He wants to be liked. I would like to see
and he saw his own grave. He saw his bedclothes being robbed while they were still warm. Like, this isn't a selfless act. Like, he isn't convinced until they're like, yo, you're going to die. And it's going to be the worst. Like, the fallout from your death is going to be miserable. Yeah. And no one's going to care about you. Like, and he's like, oh, yeah, I don't want to be alone. I guess I'll celebrate Christmas.
And then, like, just like, also, like, they're so, and I get that everyone's like in this, it's kind of very black and white, everyone, but like, I don't want my evil boss to come spend Christmas with us after you. Like, no. Like,
I know.
Just the amount.
But this
to
is
be
that
done
story. This is a story of redemption.
This is a story of redemption.
Like, and being able to forgive, even though it's been years of abuse, to like take a chance and believe somebody and accept a gift and an apology.
Deep.
It's hard.
It's deep.
It's hard.
So yeah, I'm going to give him worst politics. Who thought that would be controversial? My God.
Pre and post revelation Scrooge, worst politics. We've decided he actually learned nothing except he doesn't want people shit talking him anymore. That's
he just
all
doesn't.
He
yeah.
He was like, that was so harsh. What I just had to watch.
Yeah, that was really hard for me. That was really difficult for me to experience. Like, fuck everybody else. Fuck everybody I've foreclosed on and evicted. Fuck my ex-girlfriend. But me, it was hard for me.
You know what that energy is too? The last scene where he goes, a gift that he gives them, he like comes back to the people he wasn't going to give any donation money to. And he's like, he whispers the amount, like we can't even know in the ear. And that's very like main character.
But then we get to imagine it's so generous.
It's so generous. But he's like, it's so generous. I have to whisper it. And they're like, what do I give you? And he takes the scarf. I'm like, don't give this man this is the coziest man alive. He's got the hat. He doesn't need the scarf. takes the scarf off, the red scarf, which looks, it's such a cute moment, and he hands it to Mike. This actually might be my favorite Michael Caine moment. I screenshotted it because I'm going to send it to people. Like, just the clip anytime anyone gives me anything, because he's like, a gift for me?
It's beautiful.
A gift for me? For me? For me?
Well,
yeah, that man.
He's like, wow, this is already working. This is already working. People fucking love me.
I love
people are giving me shit. I get to have more shit. No one told me I was going to get things back when I gave, you know, like, but there is something very interesting about that lesson there, right? That like, that there is no, like, he can't just give and not get anything in return. Like, there has to be, somebody has to give something back to him in order for it to count as a moment of connection. And in that sense, I feel like this is a very capitalist movie.
Yeah.
The giving can't be the transformative moment. He has to have, and I also understand it's a movie. You have to physically see some like spot of color on the costume and some sort of transformation.
Just because we're criticizing it doesn't mean I would want it any other way. It was, what a moment.
Oh, I love it.
And the character, who's that? What's that Muppet's name? The Muppet who has the scarf on is just one.
Beaker. Dr. Bunsen Undo
He's
and Beaker.
just one neck. Beaker's
He's
just a neck. So he takes his scarf off his just neck body. It's amazing. I wouldn't want it any other way, but I think, yeah, we've turned a corner. It reminds me a lot of It's a Wonderful Life, too, in my criticisms of that movie, which are interesting paired together, that there's so much of this very narcissistic giving. I'm so good. I'm good again.
I'm so good. But also, people do experience more pleasure in giving than in receiving. I think this is in The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. But
I love that book.
Love that book. And she talks a lot about how people are so ready to give things to you, and they are so excited to you know, it makes and like it actually shoots dopamine into your brain when you give things, that the act of giving itself is a gift, you know. And I would love it if we could have a little more of that, you know. Just for the sake of giving. A gift for me.
A gift for me.
Okay,
Yeah,
our next
solidarity.
award, our final award, best supporting / spinoff, goes to the supporting character that this movie should actually be about. Not Scrooge, but
Belle.
I mean,
I'm obsessed with Belle. I mean, like, I'm so curious about her life after this. Like,
yeah, that's fascinating.
a young woman single on the eve of the Industrial Revolution, like, you know, moving from communal living to economic turmoil, trying to find her way. I want to know what her life was like afterwards. I also want to know how the ghosts got to be ghosts.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Like, how did they get those
cool.
jobs? How did they die?
Yeah.
What were their lives like?
Scary.
Is this punishment for them? Or is this something that they are excited to do? Is this an honor? I'm so curious about the ghosts.
Is this a 5 people you meet in heaven situation? Or all of the, like, are they the same? Is everyone's ghost of Christmas these same 3 ghosts? Or do we all have our own personalized ghost experience?
Yes.
I was going to say Marley, but actually, Wren, the play that you mentioned, Jacob Marley's Christmas Carol, that's like the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead version of this. That's brilliant. I'm actually going to read that because that sounds so good.
Do it. It's really wonderful. I love it.
Mine is, I don't know the name of this sweet little Muppet, but the young Muppet, I think, is a rabbit or maybe another.
The one that sings
Beans.
Good King Wenceslas?
The child that says it's Christmas Day when Scrooge is having
Beans.
Scrooge's beans.
Beans.
Yeah.
Okay, so Beans, I want everything Beans. First of all, I need to say justice for Beans, because this is why I also think Scrooge's revelation is the first thing he does is throw this like 5 pounds. I get that he's excited. He's like, I'm going to give you more money, but I'm like, you almost killed Beans. But I want to see more. I want to see Christmas Carol just through like what was Beans doing before? And then after,
God.
that day, and then, like, you just, like, come across this, like, wild man who throws 5 pounds at you, and then now your whole day is, like, I'm going to go get a turkey for this man who wants to now give turkey to the town.
Well,
like,
we know he's houseless. Because we see a shot
they
of
say
him
that?
shivering under newspaper as Kermit's walking home.
A devastating shot. I couldn't believe they included
Devastating.
that.
I can't believe I missed it.
You cut the love is gone, but you kept the tiny baby rabbit living on the streets.
Yeah,
Like, oh
fade
my
to,
God,
fade to
wow.
black, shivering under a newspaper. He is actually
Absolutely
experiencing pain.
This is
This
when
Muppet.
Kermit is coming home?
Yeah.
Man, I was so distracted by his terrible acting.
And maybe his legs, maybe the feet, maybe the Muppet feet were getting you in that scene.
Well, Wren, this has been such a joy. It's so lovely speaking with you about film and politics. We'll have you back again. But
I would
before
love
we
to.
wrap, we love discussing with our guests how we try to practice our values, our anti-capitalist values, whatever your values are in your everyday life. So is there one practice you engage in, one organization you work with that you would like to share with us and the audience?
Yes, I am doing this and I am imploring everybody I know to do this. Download 5 calls and call your reps on a daily basis. About Palestine.
Yep.
It doesn't matter at this point who's right, who's wrong, what the history is. What matters is the fighting stopping, the violence stopping. We can hash out who's right and who's wrong later, and everyone can feel real good about themselves. But I am the descendant of a Holocaust survivor, of many Holocaust survivors and folks who, and I am also the descendant. My birth name is the name of a woman who did not survive the camps, my great aunt. And she did not have any children. Her bloodline died with her. And so to watch this happening to other people when this is my direct family history, I can't do enough. I am donating, I am calling, I am protesting, and I just ask that everybody else do the same. And this is coming from an American Jew with family and friends in Israel. Please call.
Thank you for sharing all that. And we will make sure to link to 5 calls and to ceasefiretoday.com in the show notes. Very easy resources to do.
JVP, if not now, all great organizations.
Wren, where can our audience find you personally on the internet if you want them to? If not, then tell them not to even try.
Oh yeah, you can find me on the internet. I'm all over. You can find me starting in January at Lennox Mutual, which is a life insurance company dedicated to helping you make the most of the time you have. Alternatively, it's a live serialized theatrical experience curated for you and you alone. So you can find that experience at candlehousecollective.com. The tickets go on sale on Sunday, and we will be selling for, I believe, all of January and February. So you can do it multiple times. It is something you can do from the comfort of your home. I love this type of theater because it's extremely accessible anywhere in the world, regardless of your health status. If you're immunocompromised and you are worried about the COVID numbers as they fluctuate, because that's still going on, you can enjoy this theater at home. And it is also real good for people who like video games, D&D.
Oh, hell yeah.
I highly recommend checking it out. And then otherwise, you can find me on Instagram. I am less terminally online than I used to be, but that's usually the best place to find me at Wren.Mack.
Wren, great seeing you. Thank you again for your time and your words and this movie. And have a happy holiday and a happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy holidays to you both. Thank you so much
Thank
for having
you,
me.
Wren.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And if you want to support the show and get access to our premium episodes and help us out, you can go to mvcpod.com to find all of that info.
We're going to be taking the next 2 weeks off, but we will be back on January 9th of 2024 with a brand new episode on Ridley Scott's sci-fi horror masterpiece, Alien. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.